Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho, kia taua te Māori, tū te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tae ki e. E te whare tu nei tēnā koe. Good morning, everybody. E koro matua Sam, e kai whakahaere Sharon, kai kaunihera rohe o Waikirikiri, and our staff, team. Thank you so much for attending the Finance and Performance Committee meeting Wednesday, the 2nd of April. I appreciate your attendance. We'll begin with the opening karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai. E hi a ki ana te ata kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Pass this on. There's been no identification of extraordinary business. No conflicts of interest identified, or anybody has? No. No public forum this morning, so I'll move to the confirmation of the minutes. Having read those to be true and accurate, can I have a mover and seconder, and is there any comment from councillors? Sam, happy to move Councillor Miller, and seconded Sam. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, carried. Tab 5, committee terms of reference, taken as read. And move on to tab 6, chair's report.
So are you there, Shane?
Oh, Phil, yes, and Phil's online.
So I did have a small thing that which have gone over a wee bit fast for me to keep up with.
Sorry, mate.
There was a report in the Action Register. It's the investment property report, which was going to be coming back in April. I just had a question about whether this is similar to the report that Rebecca's doing for the Economic Development Committee, and I wonder whether we should just where it should sit. That was all.
Yep, thank you for the question, Phil. It is discussed in tab 11. Alison, would you like to speak to that?
Thanks, Phil. Rebecca does have a report that she will talk through on this afternoon, which is tab 11.
And public excluded, Phil.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'll move on to the my report, being a verbal report. The committee receives the following report on behalf of the Selwyn District Council CFO Alison Snedden and her team. I'd like to thank Alison and her team and the CEO for providing today's report amidst a number of challenges and in a very work-heavy program. Also like to congratulate the team on the various audit reports and also our Audit and Risk Committee for being diligent in their committee. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. So you'll receive today's information. Please feel free to ask questions, and that's all I have for my report. Thank you very much. I have a mover and seconder. Sam, move. I'm happy to move, sorry. I'll move it, and Sam seconds. Those in favour say aye. Those against, being none, so moved. Thank you. Tab 7, the Chief Financial Officer's report. Verbal update from Alison.
Thank you, Shane. Mine's also a verbal report and just covering off a few things. So insurance, recognising our costs for insurance are increasing and have increased considerably in the last few years. Between now and the end of the financial year, we will be looking at an insurance workshop with Olive Council and probably Audit and Risk, if they're available. That will go through looking at our mix of our insured asset classes, what basis we're insuring for, whether it's full replacement or rebuild or whatever it may be. Also looking at our deductibles, that's all geared towards looking at what we can do to reduce our premiums. There is the linkage back there to the strategic investment divestment as well, which is where all that information gets pulled together. Other thing, we've got an introductory meeting on Friday with Audit New Zealand to meet their new audit director. That's a meet and greet, but also looking at our planning for next year, which also will be agreeing the scope of the audit. So both parties are clear on what we are looking at. Development contributions, Peter will talk to that and Neil in the report later, but that is an area we're still trying to work through and to ensure we've got clear transparency of information coming back into this group. And the final thing that I've got is just talking to the financial hygiene project in relation to Magic and following on from what Matt talked to last week. We are some way away from getting a new ERP system, but looking forward to the next long-term plan and even annual plans, we're looking at an interim solution, and by that, so we can get some scenario analysis. So we're looking at what projects we may do, what impact they would have in rates, which was something we could not do at the last long-term plan with the system challenges. So that will be an interim solution that we'll bring in before we get to the next long-term plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Munt.
Hi, Alison. Hey, just wondering if there's shared information via the other councils as to what they're looking at doing with insurance as well, because that was going to be a nationwide issue.
We are speaking to, there is a CFO and financial controller group across a lot of the councils. We are talking to them around what they're doing as well. So we're not looking at doing something in isolation. We are trying to look at best practice across, and if we can even get other councils in the mix, so we can look at a pan council approach. So far we've been unsuccessful in that, but we will continue to try.
Thank you, Councillor Munt. Sam.
Yeah, my question's on the insurance as well, and just wondering who else will be brought into the conversation with us.
Probably Marsh, which is our broker.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the report? Moved Councillor McInnes, seconded Bob Mugford. All those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, so moved. Tab 8, Finance and Performance Report. Alison?
I will hand over at this point to Neil and Sarah.
Sarah. Morena, Neil. Morena, Sarah. Thank you.
Morena, everybody. I'm going to give you a summary of the financials for the period ended 28th of February 2025. As you can see from the reports that you have received, the council's in a year-to-date operating surplus of 19 million. This is unfavourable to year-to-date budget by 9.3 million, largely due to reduced receipts for development contributions, which are under budget by 14.4 million. Total year-to-date operating revenue, excluding development contributions, was 119.3 million, which was favourable to budget by 1.2 million. If we include development contributions, the year-to-date operating revenue is 130.4 million, but unfavourable to budget by 14.4 million. Fees and charges are 4.1 million favourable to budget due to increased resource consent fees, building consents, dumping fees and dog control fees and fines. It should be noted that the resource consent fees variance of 1.2 million is directly offset by additional consulting spend. Subsidies and grants are 2.7 million unfavourable to budget, mainly due to the NZTA subsidy allocation being lower than budgeted. The full year NZTA capital receipts are forecast to be under budget by 4 million. The council's year-to-date operating expenses, excluding depreciation, were 111.4 million, favourable to budget by 3.9 million. The year-to-date favourable operating variances to budget include personnel costs, which are 1 million favourable due to vacancies and seasonal variances. Included in this variance are the open spaces contract, which has been moved to court. Other expenditure, 2.1 million favourable across activities such as monitoring of water quality, conference and training, and network and asset management. So you'll note in your report that was incorrectly detailed as carriageway lighting. The favourable variance is actually network and asset management. Apologies for that. Operating projects, 3 million favourable to budget due to delayed starts on some projects and other projects needing to be reclassified as operating expenditure. As indicated in a previous report, this favourable variance is likely to continue for year end, and the reclassification of operating projects will be addressed in the 25-26 annual plan. Unfavourable operating expense variances include consulting, legal and professional fees, which are 2 million unfavourable. As discussed further up, 1.5 million is directly rechargeable to building and resource consents. Maintenance expenditure is 0.6 million unfavourable, mainly due to increased expenditure on roading, repairs and maintenance. It should be noted that roading maintenance is expected to be on budget for the full year. We also received some questions prior to the meeting today that I would like to answer here. One was on how the amount of rates penalties were budgeted. They were budgeted based on the prior year actual penalties with the information that was at hand at the time of budgeting. Another question we received was, what makes up the 3 million budget of other gains? So the items that made up that budget were 1.7 million gain on changes in fair value of investment property. Now this is a revaluation that takes place at year end. 786,000, which is net proceeds from gravel pit disposal. 500,000, which is sale of an asset property. And the question was also asked, what is the $1 that's currently sitting in the year-to-date actuals? That's for the sale of the Hororata Hall to the Community Trust. That concludes my summary of the financials. Any questions?
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions, councillors? Sam. Oh, I haven't got a list on here, so yes, Sam.
Just the way the microphones are being rejigged, there'll only be one live speaker. So you need to just go, Elizabeth, just go to the bed. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's all right. I haven't got anything on here. I've only got just me. I'll go to the red. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Elizabeth.
Excuse my naivety around this question, but on our page 23, I can't see what page you've got. Investment in CCOs and other similar entities of 202.8 million are 72.4 million higher than budget due to the FY24 reevaluation increase not included in the budget. I was just wondering if you were able to elaborate a little bit more on what that is.
Sorry, Elizabeth, if we could just hold that one just now. So Neil will cover the balance sheet aspect, and if we just look at the questions from the P&L just now. Thanks.
Who is it? Oh, Deborah.
Oh, thank you.
I'm colourblind, sorry.
My question is on page 22. Just interested with regards to the report talking about foodstuffs, and you expect to receive subsidies from foodstuffs in June. Can you please explain to me what those subsidies are? And part B to that question is, are we collecting development contributions from foodstuffs? That's one question. Who wants to answer that?
It's my understanding that foodstuffs will be making a contribution to the costs of the infrastructure that is required to get the site ready for them. Yes. As regarding development contributions, Peter can probably answer that question.
For clarity, Deborah, are you asking whether there's a contribution over and above the development contribution? Is that...
Well, no, it talks about in the, and my apologies, this was my question that I was going to ask, Alison. So we have written down here, we have the subsidies are expected to be received from foodstuffs in June for Levi Road's intersection project, and it will contribute towards reducing the year-to-date variance. And my question is, A, are foodstuffs paying a development contribution? Or B, do we have a special deal with foodstuffs that they will pay us a subsidy? Trying to work out what's being paid for here that's going to impact on our year-to-date variance.
Thanks,
So
Deborah.
that's-
Yeah, cheers, Ian.
Kia ora. That's part of the Levi Road intersection upgrade, so they'll be paying a portion based on their development, a portion of the construction work we're doing.
So we are collecting, the subsidy is really a development contribution paid up front.
It's actually paid at the end of the construction project. So each month we're putting in invoices and they're paying a subsidy towards that with the final completion in June.
Which gives me another question. I guess with other large developments happening in Selwyn, is this a policy that we actually have with regards to large developers that need to contribute to infrastructure upgrades outside their immediate land holding? Or is this just a one-off?
I think how this is worded in the report, so as Cam alluded to, this will be a development contribution that we'll collect. So I think it's the narrative here and how it's written within here. So we would recognise that as a development contribution. Our DC policy will set the scene around what we would and would not collect. So we wouldn't be deviating from that, Deborah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate that. I've only got to ask this question this morning, so. And I guess my other question is around Kakaha Park. And I noticed that. No, I think it's the next report. My apologies. No, it's the next report, sorry. So I'll hold it.
Thank you, Deborah. You happy, Deborah? Yeah. Okay. Sam?
Yeah, thank you. My question's around the operational costs of what we're doing, and we've had reports that in previous years our income for the year has been subsidised by other investments that we might have had or cash held to subsidise the operational costs of our council in any one financial year. At the moment, are we operating within our income so that our operational expenses are fully covered?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good question, Sam. Thank you. Thanks for the answer. Councillor Miller.
I might come back to that one that Sam just raised at the end of it, but I raised a query about rates, penalties, not about how the budget was really formed, but was it indicating to us that increasingly our ratepayers are having trouble paying their rates bills? And I was wanting to understand, as a percentage of total rates received in that quarter, what percentage are receiving rates, penalties or late payers. So I was hoping that we might have a percentage saying, well, actually we've got 4% rates overdue or whatever it is, so that we have a graph so we can see if we are seeing increasing tension in our ratepayers, that we can actually analyse that. Because that's what it appears, with increasing rates, penalties, it appears we're having, obviously people having trouble paying their rates.
Grant, I think what we will do for the next paper, so we're not able to fully answer that question just now, but within the dashboard for the next meeting, we will put in there the revenue from rates and the penalties, so we can see if there is a pattern forming from an affordability standpoint.
That's what I'm after.
Yeah.
I just want to see a trend, and it'd probably be great if we had a target to have it under,
Yeah.
so that we, it may be, there's two things going on. It could be our management of rates
Yeah.
as well.
We can extrapolate a little bit in the narrative as well to look at any payment plans that are sitting within there, just so it gives you a better understanding of what's going on in that space.
Second question is, part of the terms of reference of this committee talk to each individual business unit having, if they're over budget during the year, achieving for end of year budget by internal efficiencies. And if these weren't to be achieved, they were to have increased funding requests to the council. We've got 3 months to go. We haven't had any increased funding requests, but there still looks like there's quite a few business units running over budget. So either there's going to be a hell of a lot of tightening of belts going on before year end. I haven't got, so I was just asking the question, you haven't got any request for further funding coming to us, I'm assuming, because nothing's come?
So there is some offsetting that we've got, and I think the one area just now is consulting spend, which is over. So we've got the 1.5 that is offset around in Bob Love's area on the fees and charges. For the next meeting, what we will do is look at our year-end projection, which will show the areas that may or may not be under or over. And we'll look at how we're proposing to offset some of that spend. So we're working on the basis if we can find efficiencies within the budget, we will move forward with some things. But where there are areas that are over, we will bring that back to the next meeting.
I think that's where we were always heading from the CEO's point of view, is that we were going to have extrapolated forward end of year potential, end of year positions. I understand it's a work in progress, but I personally don't want to be blindsided by a big budget blowout at the end of financial year saying you need to approve 4 million extra for roading, 2 million for water services and another million for community services. We should have picked that up well in advance of this occurring. I'm not saying it hasn't occurred, but I'm just giving you my position on that so that you understand that. Can you give me some insight about DCs? I suppose I'm sitting here going, you drive to Selwyn, it appears we're going gangbusters in every single town, and yet we're $10 million under in our DC collection. Is there any insights that you have into why that is?
Peter will address this in his development contribution report.
Okay, thank you. NZTA projected to be $4 million under budget by end of year. Is that associated with the reduction in our roading team's work program? If we're clearly going to be $4 million under budget from NZTA, are we factoring that into our work program?
So US not here, but to speak for him, he has redone his budget according to the funding that we have received.
Yeah. Finally, Sam raised an interesting issue about particularly around our investments. I won't miss the opportunity to put my view forward. It's particularly referencing Christchurch. When CCHL was set up, it was seen as the icing on the cake. It wasn't initially seen as a part of the operational budgets, and I think we had the same view here. It was any dividends we got from Cord and from Orion were sort of seen as potential bonuses, not but what's happening over time is those dividends and income are being built into our base income for the year, and so we're relying on those investments to provide. So it may be a case of the governance group actually saying that's fine, we reaffirm that position, that's what we'll do. We'll always include our investment income as part of our operational budgets, but it was traditionally seen as something that was side. And in fact, at one stage there was a drive to have your rates bill come, this is your rates bill minus investments. This is what it is now, showing it so it's quite transparent, but that never came to pass. But I just wanted to put that on the table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Grant. No further questions, councillors? Neil.
Right, I'll
Thank
just
you,
talk
Neil.
to the balance sheet. I'd just like to reiterate the fact that the balance sheet is a bit of a work in progress at the moment, so we're cleaning that up. So for this February month-end report, we've started investigating the mapping of the balance sheet of 1,330 GL accounts, which is quite an extensive exercise, and trying to align that with the annual report. So it looks a little bit different to what we presented for the January month-end, and it's still a work in progress. We have received some feedback prior to today to make it more similar to the annual report in terms of notes, numbering, making it easier to tie back the commentary we provide to the face of the balance sheet. So we'll incorporate that into the next month's report. But I'd also just reiterate that the phasing of the budget and therefore the comparables between actuals and budget doesn't really make sense on a monthly basis because of how the phasing of the annual plan was done last year. So we'll probably mostly report on the drivers of the actuals versus the full year budget, because your month to date or year to date budget won't be phased accurately for this financial year. So just going into the detail, for trade and other receivables, That's increased by 34.4 million. Of 34.4 million, have increased by 9.9 million from the prior year. That's mostly due to the timing of due rates, and then also, as I mentioned, unphased rates debtors budget. For the PP&E, there is a bit of an issue in terms of the mapping that we're still investigating. But so we can't really talk to the $790 million higher than budget. Currently, it's sitting at 2.86 billion. With regards to the investment in CCOs, so the 72.4 million higher than budget is mostly due to the 50 million higher than budget that we reported for FY24, as reported last week in the adoption meeting. So that's our investment in Orion, Cord, and Transwaste. With regards to the other non-current assets, that is a mapping error, and currently in Magic. So that the budgeted amount of $10 million refers to the term deposit that was utilized in October 24. So we'll remap that back to cash and cash equivalents next month. With regards to the trade payables, it's got a balance of $50.8 million, and that's increased by 10.9 million from FY24. With regards to the details, the creditors have actually gone down to 5.6 million versus a budgeted 10 million. We've got an ECAN payable sitting in there for $6.5 million. That will be payable in April, so that'll drop off in the month of April. Our accrued expenses, as we've stated in the report, we're doing more work with business and getting capital and OPEX accruals in there. So for the month of Feb, we've got a $29 million accrual sitting in there, combined CapEx and OPEX. And then revenue received in advance has got a balance of 2 million versus a budget of 300K. So that is just rates that we've received for the quarter that gets released monthly to the P&L. Borrowings of $219.6 million. That's increased by $14.2 million, and that is mostly due to increased DC spend, but we'll talk more to that in the next paper. Any questions?
Grant.
I think it's probably a better I address my questions to the CFO with respect, because they're negative questions. I'll put this as politely as possible. When you state I can't talk about an error of 790 million, to me that's totally unacceptable. If you've got an error of 790 million somewhere, we need to understand that today, not last week. You know, that's a major error. That's bringing the auditors kind of error. It's untenable for me to sit here as a governor and to hear that. So I'll put that on the table. I guess the second thing is, I suppose, I've consistently heard about work in progress, mapping errors. Yeah. How long should I expect to sit here and listen to those? I understand you've had problems in the past, but there's sort of an expiry of patience in some respects, that you can blame the past for so long, but eventually you say, actually, it's time to front up. So I guess I'm getting close to that position on that as well. I now recognise what that $10 million was, because I didn't know what it was, but it was actually the cash we're supposed to hold on to and deposit for insurance, isn't it? And so that's what it is, isn't it?
No.
It's not that?
No.
It's a different 10 million altogether.
Yeah.
So the 10 million that we're holding in cash for insurance is in current assets somewhere, is it?
No. I think we've had this conversation before.
That's been
so,
what? Okay.
there's the 10 million that Neil talked to in there. That has been wrapped up into a current asset, which was actually a term deposit. So it should have been wrapped up in cash and cash equivalents. So that's the mapping error. Sorry, do you want me to answer the rest of your question just now? Or
Yeah,
I'm
I'm trying to be respectful and direct, but like that level of error to me, is not acceptable to come here and say, I can't tell you about it. It's just not on.
So I think there's one thing we'll start off by talking to, and I think Neil and Sarah have both touched on this. Historically, the financials have been prepared on a cash accounting basis and not on accrual accounting. So what was being presented was never a true reflection of what the spend was in any given period. So what the team are looking to move to is recognising spend, and that could be invoices that have not been, purchase orders being raised for, invoices sitting on people's desk. Sarah's team and the business partners are going around the organisation to say, what is your true cost? So where in the past we've had issues with mapping, as an example, we've had budgets that have been just phased evenly on 12th, like over 1/12 each month. So the 790 that you talk about, that is a phasing budget issue. So when we've done the previous long-term plan, the budgets and the issues we had with Magic, we have phased budgets over a 12-month period rather than actually recognising that spend when it's going to happen. So that is giving rise to the 790 issue here. So it's working with Sarah and Neil with the respective teams, especially in Tim Mason's area, to make sure we've got that capital budget, the 1.3 billion that's in the long-term plan, phased in such a way that it's recognising when spend is going to happen. So that, coupled with some of the challenges we've had with Magic that are not going away, they won't go away until we have a new ERP system in place. Magic in itself is not necessarily a bad system, but we have implemented it and layered upon layered things on top of it to make it a rather unworkable system. So we're still unravelling some things, and we will continue to still unravel some things for the time being, unfortunately. Yeah, I think the one thing we will say am I comfortable with the financial position as it is reported? Yes, I am. And I think that's the key thing. That's coupled with Audit New Zealand signing off their audit report. Yes, there was challenges, we recognise that. But I think it comes down to, are we comfortable with the financial position for our Selwyn District Council that we're reporting? And the answer is yes.
That's probably the ultimate answer.
Yeah.
Is, can you give me assurance that you have confidence in the figures that report here today?
Yep.
That in fact that your position is Selwyn District Council. You know, 790 million is not a small sum of money, regardless of phasing.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Grant. I
Kat.
do appreciate your robust questions and your answers too. Alison, I guess benefit potentially would be the members here from Audit and Risk and being on that journey of development and facing some of the significant challenges that we've had. More to the point, and I think it was one of the questions that I did talk to at the last Audit and Risk meeting was, as a governor, assuring the CEO and the team whether you have enough support to deliver on some of these challenges. So I think I too went through some of those same questions, Grant, and my instinct was to then first ask whether we have done it. This is what we've asked for, we're receiving it, and now the question for me is whether we have done enough to enable our team to deliver up-to-date reporting that you've asked for. What I am really pleased to see is some of the extrapolation of some of the vested assets and things like that we've been asking for a long time, to give a true and accurate account of what our financial position is. And Sam has asked that question as well around, are we operating within our means? So now it's just about catching up, enabling the team to be resourced to do that, and then deliver on what we're asking for. So next question, I can't see red, sorry. I can't see, who's next? Deborah. Oh, Lydia. That was 50-50.
Thanks. I think I was going to ask some questions around the P&L, but I think it was better in the balance sheet. I think, I'm still in my mind about the audited annual report from last week, and I look at the P&L and I look at the balance sheet and actually how vulnerable we are to growth and our DC's invested assets. I really appreciate the change that's been made here for the DCs to be in current liabilities, or non-current liabilities, sorry. I think that's made everything a bit clearer for us, so I appreciate the change that you've made after bringing that up at the last meeting. I think with these DCs, is there and I know that you said someone's going to talk to DCs, but are we going to see a catch-up period before end of year? And, you know, I'm just thinking about timing because we don't have any forecasting in front of us is what I find very difficult to look at. And generally, from my experience, I would have seen forecasting. I know that the team are working on that, and that's fantastic. But I guess at the end of the day, my real question actually is what risks do you see for the organisation leading up to the financial end of year? Are there things that we need to be aware of? Are we talking budget amendments? Are we talking DCs received vested assets? Are there organisational risks for us? And potentially this is something you've discussed at Audit and Risk, but as I'm not a member of that, I don't follow that all the time.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thanks, Lydia. I'll take this one before Neil wants to chip in with the details. So I think the next paper that will come to this meeting will have our year-end projected position. There is a lot of work that we need to do on development contributions to see what will be collected between now and the end of the year. So that will span across Peter and also working with Tim Mason and his team as well. I don't have an answer to that one just now, unfortunately. With the risk space and the broader risk space, each month we go through with the finance business partners with each ELT member to see what is going on in their area, where can we control spend, where can we switch off spend, and where are there efficiencies. So that's an ongoing conversation that we're having, Lydia.
And so does that conversation, is that relayed, that's not relayed to us at any stage because it's not our role to do that, or?
Sharon. Do I got it?
Thank you. We talk about that, and I've referenced that each month at the Finance and Performance, in terms of looking at financial prudency and making sure that we come in on budget. So, you know, part of the digital investment is about having dashboards for all of our heads of departments who have the ability to look into their budgets, understand what is happening, and my expectation would be is that if we were going to have a major variance, we would be highlighting that. But as Alison says, to date, we're happy with how we are tracking along on budget, but understanding that the DC's conversation is still yet to come. What I would say is what I am happy with compared to previous years is that our operational expenditure is no longer being required to be offset by DCs, which is historically what has happened here, is that we have remained in budget because it's the DCs that have been the saving grace. What you're now saying is that we are sticking within our operational budgets and we are practicing financial prudency well, so that we have deliberately separated off the DCs from operational budget. So I would like to hope that the governors are satisfied that they can see that we are no longer reliant on DCs to make sure that council ends the end of the year financially well. So for me as a CE, that's a huge step up from previous years.
That's and that's great to hear, and that's the commentary that I expect to this, and so thank you. I guess, you know, like I still sit in a concerned space around, you know, all this catch up and the change and in our balance sheet and the issues that we're having, and so it's probably not along the same lines of what Grant said, but it's more along, when do you think that all these challenges that we've had are going to be sorted?
Yes, Sharon.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. I think I've always been really upfront, is that you don't turn the Titanic in a year. And in terms of, I think we have made huge progress and steps in the right direction. We know that we are going to need a different financial system. You know, that will be a future conversation for a long-term plan, because it would probably far exceed a budget that we have currently got, but we need to understand what it is that we want and need and what would be the best thing, so we can come back and have workshops and a conversation with councillors as to what that would look like. But again, it's going to take, and not harking back to historical legacy, because we actually own everything and we take responsibility for that. But I just want to reiterate, We cannot turn the ship entirely, and we are still unpicking and unpacking things that have been 10 and 15 years in the making. But actually, we are making really good inroads, and we understand our business now far better than I think we've ever done. And that comes right down to things like the number of cost centres that we have is ridiculous for an organisation. That is a huge body of work to reduce down from thousands of cost centres down to what is a workable 200, which is what you would expect to see in an organisation. You don't do that kind of stuff overnight or in a year.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Thank you very much, Sharon. I think it really highlights the separation of governance and operations as well, the conversations there around setting the direction and then monitoring when the appropriate time and then enabling that delivery to come to fruition. So thank you very much. What is the next report? The dashboard? Oh, is there any more questions? Oh, Deborah. Sorry, Deborah. And Sam.
I was going to actually ask this question through the DCs, but there's a development contribution, 24-25 actual DC sitting on our diligent. That has been updated with regards to what we've collected this financial year since the 1st of July. Thank you. I'll talk to you about some of the movements within the development contributions that have been recorded as to why. Just trying to understand, and thank you for all the work that you've done for splitting it up into the ward categories to help understand who's paying for growth here, I just want a clarification about that 24-25, and just to make sure that the 25-26 there's a new balance sheet for us to actually view. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Yeah, my questions sort of follow up from what you said, Sharon, around cost centres and comments you made, Alison, about Magic and the need for change. And I guess I'm just wondering, what is the time frame? We don't turn the Titanic in a day. That's true. But as we are turning and have now been turning for 8 months, 12 months on this, where do you expect we'll get to those few hundred cost centres? Is that done in the next 2 years or 5 years? And around the Magic conversation, again, where do you see that solution? Is there incremental change on that, or does there come a point in time where we have to fund something that's quite different from where we are now?
Thanks, Sam. So I think it's incremental change just now, and I think Matt's talked to this in his presentations as well. So we've not set Magic up well, so we need to go through a process, and that's what's called the financial hygiene piece, of tidying up what is in Magic. So even if the funding was there, we could not move lock, stock and barrel to a new ERP at this point in time. It's the age old, you tidy your house before you put it on the market. So we need to tidy up the backyard, and that goes to Sharon's point on the cost centres. I think at one point we were running with 24,000 GL codes, which is completely unmanageable in any organisation. So we need to dial that back and look at what cost centre structure does the organisation need that then enables us to take that into a new ERP system. The finance hygiene piece, working with Matt and his team, will probably be over the next 12 months. That will be coupled with an interim solution that we will bring in, which will allow us to go through the next annual plan, long-term plan as well.
Cool, thank you. And I want to say thanks for the reporting that we've got and the changes that we've seen, and just to highlight that it's $3 billion worth of assets that we're responsible for looking after, and often, and I see it in different councils around the country, in my other role, a lot of time can get spent on $20,000, and every $20,000 decision makes a difference. So we do need to think about how we're spending money. But when we're responsible for $3 billion worth of infrastructure and assets, there's a level of conversation that's needed and of reporting that's needed for us to be able to make informed decisions. So I want to thank the team for bringing this the consolidation of this reporting to us, and I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Yes, so that comes to the end of the report. We'll have a mover and a seconder. Moved Malcolm and seconded Elizabeth. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, carried. Thank you very much, team, for your report. We move now on to the Sorry, my glasses. Organisational projects and performance reports. Kamal and Peter. Oh, no, it doesn't.
I think just recognising Kamal's off ill just now, so Cam will cover the report alongside Peter.
Kia ora. Thanks, Steve.
Sorry, just one final thing. I think before we get into the report, Tim Mason just wants to do a bit of an intro into this report as well.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you, Chair. Look, first off, I want to thank Cam. Cam has stepped into delivering this report last second, given Kamal is ill. And I think I also take the opportunity to introduce you to our two new senior project managers sitting at the back of the room there, John Wood and Matt Allen. Raise your hands, chaps. So, look, you'll be hearing directly from them at some point in the not too distant future. But the team have done an incredible job this year delivering the Capital Works program. In fact, we've delivered more work at this point in the year than we ever have in the past. I think the report speaks to delivering almost double our work when measured against the last 2 years. But we've still got a lot of work to do, especially in continuing to improve our systems and processes. And we've also talked a little bit today already about the financial hygiene project underway. One of the areas that we are working hard on is forecasting and delivering our work to that forecast. And to that point, I just wanted to draw your attention to a section of the report which speaks to us delivering around 91% of our budget. I would be over the moon if we deliver 91%. I think for full transparency, it's going to be closer to circa 80%. That's still going to be an incredible outcome for the team and far more work than we've come close to delivering before. So at this point, I just want to recognise the team for the hard work throughout the course of this year. We're doing a lot of work, as you've already heard today, around our forecasting for the coming financial year and our phasing of work through that year. And what we don't deliver this year will be carried forward into that year. And I've got a growing level of comfort that we'll be able to deliver against that. But as Sharon's mentioned as well, we don't turn the Titanic overnight, but we're making some significant steps to improving our delivery capability, which we'll do through the course of the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Well done. Cam.
Thank you. Kia ora, committee. Unfortunately, Kamal's not here, but happy to stand and go through the report. So Peter and I will run through a few points that we think should concentrate on the report. And we've also got the senior PMs over here to answer some questions if need be later in the report. So we'll take the report as read. I just want to add that we've incorporated some of the requests from previous meetings to add further context. The report is written at this point in time, so in February. There's been some movement and progress on points in the previous reports, and we'll highlight those as we go through. So a few points to highlight. This report is for capital project expenditure and major project portfolio across council. The report's been streamlined to show necessary information on projects and performance by overviews. Please let us know if there's any aspects you'd like to see in future. Obviously we've changed it a couple of times, but happy to change it again to provide information you need. The council project program for this year is a total of 181 million. This is broken down to three main project types. So that's capital projects of 158 million, operational projects or business as usual, which is a budget of 22 million, and emergency funding with a budget of 1.5. So for the majority of the report, we'll be focusing on the capital expenditure of 158 million, which at the end of February 25, we'd completed approximately 81 million. And as Tim said, previous reports, previous years, this was around 40 million, so double the previous, which is good. We've had budget savings of approximately 14 million, and at this stage we anticipate a carry forward of about 14 million. It's noted in the report going forward, this positive result obviously from the last couple of years, and we're currently still on a journey, as Tim has said. The progress is good, and we recognise there's still further work to be done in forecasting and further training underway. So we're still embedding a lot of improvements to progress and improve things going forward. I'll just hand over to Peter.
Thanks, Cam. Kia ora. As has been stated before, obviously we're at 81 million year to date. Last year to date, 44 million. Of that, that was 46% of the total works completed last year. At this point, at 81 million, we are 56% compared to our target our target in here of 130. So we are well on track, and for the last 4 months are always shown to be some of our highest months in the year. So we are hoping to see pick up in that. Cam, anything else on your end?
So just carrying on from what Peter has said, the carry forwards of approximately 14 million. If you refer to pages 29 to 31 in table 2, that sort of covers off the majority of what those carry forwards are and the projects associated with them. So it's approximately 7 million in 5 waters, 2.5 in parks and reserves, 2 million in transport, 1 million in operational delivery, and the remainder in facilities and resource recovery. The budget savings refer to table 3, which is on page 31 of the report. Sorry, of the agenda, not the report. The majority of the savings is in waters of about 6 million, which I'll talk a bit more about shortly, and transport of 4 million. So moving on to the phasing and spend year to date. Sorry, I'm getting you to go around the report a bit. Figure 1, which is on page 27, and also figure 3 at the bottom of page 31, obviously shows that we're generally on track with the forecast and current spend. Variances to forecast have been noted in the report. Areas mainly in wastewater, transport, reserve projects and resource and recovery. Water and transport projects continue to feature as council's larger portfolios, so obviously the larger carry forwards and etc. in those areas. If we look at the forecast for the remaining quarters for the financial year, the majority of the spend is highlighted as water and transport, and it's expected to accelerate obviously over summer, so until now, and then sort of carrying on to complete towards the end of the year. The main spend going forward is in the water and wastewater, some of our larger projects, Levi and Lowe's Road intersection upgrade in the transport area, Lincoln Town Centre car parks, which are underway, district-wide resurfacing, which is sort of under operational contracts, and also Foster Park. So I'm just going to note on a couple of project report tracking those sort of larger projects. The main one being Elsmeadow Pines, which we discussed previously. It's going ahead of program, which is really good. And due to sort of conditions being operative for what we're doing, we've saved quite a bit of money in that area. So we're expecting to finish between $6 and $7 million under the budget, which is good. Cost savings have mainly been to obviously the construction and the routes we've been going. We've had a lot less groundwater, so it's been a benefit for us. It hasn't slowed things down, and we've just managed to crack on and get it done. The second project is Prebbleton Roundabouts. So this is part of the 4 roundabouts that have been undertaken, including Shands, Blakes and Springs and Marshes. The projects are now complete, but we're expecting the cost to finish approximately $1.5 to $2.5 million higher than expected. Currently finalising costs and mainly in the property side of things. So we're having to sort of resolve those issues before we can give you a final cost. Increased costs in the construction have mainly been due to contamination and services. So we weren't anticipating to have those additional costs to that degree. But the extra expenditure will be covered in or offset by savings. And we're currently in discussion with NZTA to see if we can increase their contribution for part of that. And there'll also be some that'll be covered by development agreements. The other sort of larger project is Waihora Whātārau. Obviously, we're only in the early stages of that project, so there will be a carry forward for that project this year. I'll just pass on to Peter again.
In terms of the frequency reporting, as Alison talked about earlier, we're in the middle of the financial hygiene. As part of this, we're also looking at introducing Magic's projects module, which will allow us to have our projects sitting in proper tiers of grandparent, parent, child, which will give us better visibility, not only at the low level, but being able to roll it up. As part of this, this changes a lot of the linking that goes through to Apex, our forecasting system, and then goes through to the dashboard and frequency. So at the moment, we're just having to work as those changes are made to then make the changes through to the dashboard. So we're hoping to be able to give you more information around where that dashboard's at in July, once hopefully we're a bit further along in that stage of the financial hygiene project. Any questions?
Mm-hmm.
Councillors, questions, commendation?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Deborah. Alison, Tim, did you have something further to add?
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add quickly to what Peter's saying around what we're talking about here when we speak around frequency is a master program that sits across our entire capital program. We've never had that before, and it's a massive step in the right direction to support management of our time and cost elements of our projects. And it's really critical because our program is super complex now. We've got a massive complex program and we need a really good master program to sit across that to help us deliver those projects. Now, that's in place. So the team, again, have done some really good work to get that master program in place. But what we need now is the financial hygiene piece to happen. Because the master project pulls from Apex, it's really important that the information that's in Apex is accurate. If that's not accurate, the master program isn't accurate. So we've moved quite a wee way in regard to some of our processes to support delivery of the program. Now we're focused on making sure that the information in Apex is accurate so we can see the benefit of the master program, which you'll also see because it'll improve the quality and the level of reporting that comes to you as governors.
Great stuff. Thank you, Tim. Deborah.
Thank you, and thanks for the report. Just so I can get my question asked right, when we're looking at carry forwards, these are carry forwards for the financial year, this current financial year, that I can expect to go into next financial year?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That leads nicely onto my question, I guess, with regards to understanding, and I'm just going to use Kakaha Park and Lincoln Reserve Extension because they're both Springs, both in the Springs ward. When we collect development contributions for reserves in the Springs ward, we collect them across all the developers, and these are the two major projects that need those DCs to be spent on them. And when I go back to last year's DC budget on page 30, and I see that what we collected for that actual, and I'm looking at this as a financial year, 839,671 for reserves. And then I look at the cost of developing 2 new reserves for the Springs in that area. And my question is, why isn't growth paying for growth? And the reason why I'm asking this is because we have these projects. We also know that we had a big blowout in the budget in Kakaha Park Stage 1 that ate up a large percentage of development contributions that were sitting in that account. The ratepayers are expected to pick up the shortfall for the deficits in the accounts. And what we have is a district-wide rating for reserves, so every ratepayer across our district is picking up those deficits. And to me, it just seems that growth isn't paying for its fair share for growth. It's being highly subsidised by the residents of Selwyn under the current models that we have to work with, and I'm not blaming our council at all. It is what it is, and it's the legislation that we currently have to work with under the Local Government Act. And I just want to really, really highlight that, you know, we might be one of the fastest growing areas, but we're also attracting a lot of growth. And I just like to understand that a little bit more with regards to our balance sheets. And I know it's not going to happen overnight. And I really, really do appreciate the work that Alison and Tim and your team have yet got to do. But I just want to really, it's not more a question, it's just highlighting the differential in those accounts, just highlighting an area that I've chosen.
Thanks, Deborah. Did you want part of that? Was that just for information?
It was more for information.
Thank you.
Something that needs to be actually teased out a little bit more and presented to the government board.
Thank you.
Just with regards to understanding, is growth paying for growth? How much is growth being subsidised? Because we have to borrow the money to actually undertake these projects. And there's a big deficit in what we're collecting in DCs. Who's picking up the tab in the meantime? How is it being presented to us in governance with regard to how we do our district-wide rating?
Yep.
And is growth paying for its fair proportion of growth? And that's the question. And
Thank you,
no
Deborah.
one answered that today.
Yep.
But
We've heard that.
that should be the end goal.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Taken on board. Sam. Elizabeth.
Page 28. So, Ellesmere the Pines wastewater pipeline. Fantastic to hear that we've come under budget because the weather has been very good to us. That's brilliant. You talk about the savings for the project. Those savings will be deducted from future payment claims. So, which future payment claims? Is that anything to do with the Ellesmere Pines wastewater pipeline future payment claims, or are we talking about where are we taking the savings from one project then being able to be bought into for other areas, like we've just talked about the Prebbleton's gone above budget, so will that be where that savings is then divvied across to that direction? I also wanted a little bit of clarity around refurbished library space. Is that a generic term for the Leaston Library, or I'm just a bit unclear what refurbished library space is? I'm presuming that it's from that, but it's not very clear. And we've also got exterior repairs under the transport total and pod/meeting space extension. I'd just like to know a bit more about what those two costs are. Thanks.
Who would like to answer the first?
So to answer your first question about Ellesmere Pines, it'll be the payment claims that Cord is putting into us each month. So they'll be, instead of it, say, being $2 million, it might be $1 million. So they're just reducing those over the next few months. And the other ones, refurbished library space, as far as I'm aware, that is the Rolleston library space, so within the Rolleston Community Centre. So the space in there, they were doing some refurbishments in there to utilise that space better. And exterior repairs, I will just have a quick look.
Elizabeth, just while Cam looks for the rest of that information, just with regards to the pod meeting space extension, so that's what we'd included within the long-term plan to make sure we had sufficient space in the building to accommodate the staff numbers. So it's not so much a redesign. What we've done is rejigged some of the number of seats, so the way the desks were laid out. And also I think that was factored into the long-term plan around would we extend this building or not. So we've not done any extension. There's no plans that have been brought back to this committee yet.
So just answering your final question on the exterior repairs, Matt's just given me a bit further information on that. That's the Lincoln Library. So there was actually some minor issues with the structural steel on the outside, so it's just repairing those and some minor interior works undertaken as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Sam, thank you.
Thank you. Well, firstly, brilliant work on the delivery that we've had this year. It's excellent to see the massive improvement from where we've been in the past, and that had been something that Sharon had asked you about, and great to see that that's filtered through the organisation to have the delivery where we're tracking to where we want it. Tim, I'm interested in the comment about 91% compared to 80%, and I guess this feeds a little bit into just like the reporting accuracy, and as 90% because it falls out of some program and it tells you where you think it'll be, and then you're giving us actually some real world analysis and maybe some extra data since the report was written. I'm just wondering how do we go from 91 to 80?
Yeah, Sam, thank you. A bit of real world analysis. I think the report looks at the forecast through to the end of the financial year, and that's what you're seeing in regard to the 91%. Now, we've got some big months ahead of us to report on. We're in peak construction period. And look, I think it's just a transparent conversation I'm trying to have. 91 is a stretch target. And I'm not saying we're not going to achieve that, but I think when you look at it pragmatically, I think the number is going to be closer to 80%. Our current forecasting that we have in place would suggest 91. I think when you take a step back and look at it pragmatically, I think it's going to be closer to 80. But also speaks a little bit to what I was saying around our forecasting and the systems and processes we're currently using to provide reporting to this governance group. So I think it's important at times just to step back and have a look at what we're reporting on and make sure that there's some pragmatism to that.
Okay, and is the 91% that the report shows, is that of dollar value or is that of projects completed? Because it seems to me if we've got $160 million worth of projects and we've found 8 or 9% worth of savings, then that 91% could actually mean we've done everything we said we'd do, and we've found 9% of dollar savings along the way. Is the savings included in the 91%, or how does that?
From what I understand, it is. So it is a dollar value, and it does take into consideration the savings that we've identified. Peter, you could probably confirm that.
Yeah. So yeah, it is based on dollar value. So what we've done is we took our total capital annual budget of 158 million and deducted the savings to set our new target budget. And we're saying we would complete 91% of that new target budget, with the new target budget being 144 million.
Okay. Thank you. And we want to complete the work that we tell our community we're going to do. That's the whole reason we go through an annual plan and talk about projects and deliver them. Is there ever a point where we can deliver more than what we say we'll do, and some of next year's things begin now? Or is there like a glass ceiling on what can actually be delivered because we haven't received the income necessarily to spend on next year's project? How does phasing happen if there's an opportunity to run a second project in the same location because there's efficiencies that you've identified that wasn't meant to start for another 6 months, but you bring it forward? Is there a future state where we're completing 102% of projects, or will we just only ever get closer to 100 if we ever get there?
Oh, good question, Sam. Look, I think we're operating at the moment within our budget constraints. there is quite a lot of movement across our budget, so we do bring projects forward. At the moment, if we bring work forward, and we do that quite regularly, we need to make sure that we're pushing a similar amount out into the following year. So we're balancing our budget at the moment. As far as delivering more than 100% of our budget, it would be great if we could get to that point. I think at the moment we're really happy with the incremental improvement that we're seeing in our delivery. Our focus next year, and I've always been really clear with the team that our LTP is a commitment we're making to the community. And my expectation is that we deliver on that 100%. And the team have really got in behind that, and you can see that this year. When I look at the work that the team has done next year to phase the projects and the budget, the finance team and the IMP team, it's looking really deliverable. So I would like to think that come next year, we're delivering 100% of our program, and that's the expectation.
Okay. And I guess this conversation, and it's on the last paper as well, is a contrast between if we're operationally overspending, and that's because there's various reasons in the report why that might be, compared to an overspend in the capital space might be because of a project being brought forward to gain other efficiency. So I just think as we're discussing overspend, we need to think about whether it fits in the capital spend space or the operational spend space, because we should come at those discussions quite differently. If one's actually competing projects promised to the community, and the other is we're trying to do business as usual, but it's just costing us more than we thought. How do we rejig that conversation? No, thank you.
I'd like to just tease that question that Elizabeth asked a wee bit further out about project risk on the Ellesmere Pines. Just want to understand, is that the standard for that kind of contract, that you pay the risk component in advance and then claim back if it's not achieved? It seemed to me the invoices normally would be on work actually done, and if there was a risk that occurred, you'd claim for the risk. Is that normal for that kind of contract to run it like that, where you pay the risk component out in the payments?
Well, I guess in this case, the contract had allowed a lot more risk than was needed to be spent or utilised, I suppose. So that is one way of doing it. The other way would be them invoicing all the way through and then paying us back the money. But I guess this way it's not going from our budgets to them, they're just giving us a reduced invoice.
I guess I'm just not sure I'm getting my message across. I assumed that they would be invoicing for works done, which would take into account the risk that never occurred. Where it appears from the report, they've invoiced us for a notional sum with the risk involved in it, and now we're claiming it back because it didn't occur. Am I reading it wrong?
So with this contract, the risk was built into the rates. So when claiming the standard rates, they claimed the risk,
right?
And that's why we've had to do it.
So it's built into the contract,
yeah.
And you now claim it back. Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Great question, Grant. Lydia? Oh, Sophie.
That's right. I'm not sure whether the screen that you've got there, because it's different symbols depending on whether you're red or green, so that might be the easier way to do it rather than looking at the microphones. Oh. Yeah, the light there's red. Anyway, something's obviously changed on the screens. Fair enough. So you can see the different icons.
Thank you.
There you go.
Please proceed.
Sorry. Yeah, this is really good a conversation. So thank you very much, everybody. Loving the information about delivery, value engineering, and really feeling for anybody dealing with software changes, because I've only ever worked on smaller changes from one system to another, and that was a nightmare. And this is massive in comparison. So it's painful, but it's good once it's over, and you can move on and feel a bit more confident about everything. The question I have is around things like, on page 28, we've got East Madison's road upgrade delayed by other subdivision contractors. And it's not specifically a question about that project. It's more around that as a risk, because obviously, we've talked plenty about the amount of growth that we have. And when something like that happens, we have problems with budgets because growth doesn't necessarily happen on the timeline that is originally expected for a multitude of reasons. But if we've got something where we've programmed in a project and we can't deliver it at the time that we've put the resource in there and we've expected that the budget will be spent at that time and everything else, is there how easy is it for us that we have to delay this? Like, what happens? Does it, in terms of the materials and the plant and everything else, can we just take it somewhere else and use it there instead? Or, yeah, does it have a financial implication for us rejigging for somebody else's decision?
Yeah, I guess on the greater scheme of things, what we're doing with the Forward Works Planner is that we will eventually have a map of the whole district and showing when things are happening, and hopefully we'll have that eventually public so that people doing subdivisions or service providers putting in their services will be able to see what we're planning as well, so we can sort of not have that overlap happening. In the case of this project, it was a group of projects that were tendered at once, so the contractor could go to another site and undertake the work there and then come back to this one. But yeah, if it was just one site, there may be some downtime costs for us.
Sam sort of already touched on some of what I wanted to say, which was around capital target budget and the percentage of forecasted final spend. And I guess I'm really interested to see that as a project number, not just a dollar spend. So you asked for feedback on reporting. Can we at some point, and I don't know whether your new program will give us that, but I would like to understand the percentage of projects delivered as a number, not just capital spend, if that makes sense. I think that would actually add some high value for our community as well, to understand that this is how many projects we've actually delivered, not just the millions of dollars associated with those. And I just had a question, it was around value engineering. And do you have a priority to deliver the high value projects for our community first, and then some of the non-necessary projects as a second rate priority when you're getting to this time of the year?
You start to answer your first question about the projects delivered. You're meaning the number, not the percentage of the projects.
Yeah, so say you have 1,000 projects, just as a hypothetical figure, and you've delivered 900 projects. I'd be interested to see that alongside the dollar spend. So it's great to see the capital spend there, but it's around actual numbers of saying we actually delivered this many projects in that budget.
We've thought about including that in the report in the past, and part of the issue we've kind of come up against is you could complete 20 projects that cost you $1,000, or complete one project that's taken 3 years and costs $20 million, and it's how we identify those weightings. So that's something we can go back to and just try and figure out. Maybe we put them into small projects, complete, medium, large, or just to give a bit of a scale. Otherwise, just a number of completed by itself doesn't really give an idea of the full scale of what's been done. So that's something we can look at including into the future reports.
Sharon, did you have something to add? Or
I've got my thing.
Thank you. I'm learning that I have to come to the other end of the table if I'm going to interject. What I would say, Lydia, is that I think there's an important comms piece here throughout the year to our community around projects. And I'm a big fan of, you asked, we said, we did. And so in terms of being able to talk to specific projects, because I think Peter raised a really good point about you could have 20 projects at $1,000 each, is that what I'll ask Tim and the team to do with the comms team is to make sure that we put out regular communications to the community in line with what we agreed to in the long-term plan, the range of projects and how we're tracking on things, and we'll find some way to be able to communicate that as well, I think more regularly and routinely through the year.
Great, and would that be reported to this committee, or is it just comms going out to the public and not to us?
Oh, we can do both, but they'll look subtly different in different ways. Notwithstanding the complexities that Peter has indicated around making sure that we put some caveats around, $2 million 30 projects or something. But in terms of, I presume what you're asking is that you want to make sure that our community are aware of the work that's being undertaken and the work that's not. So,
Yep. Yep. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, just really quickly to add, one of the really cool things about having a master program in place from a reporting perspective is you can generate reports which give you an indication of where the projects sit at their different phases. So, Lydia, to your question, it would be really easy to bring a report to this group, which would identify the number of projects that have finished construction, that have gone into practical completion, that are coming out of practical completion, that are through their defects period, and it's much easier to provide that level of detailed information.
That would be much appreciated, because I see this as finance and performance, and so we need to understand how we're actually performing in this. And
Just to add to your other question about projects that are higher priority being moved around, I guess already most of our water, wastewater and transport projects are already really highly prioritised, and the other ones are obviously different funding sources, so they don't swap around based on that. If something came through that was really important and needed to be undertaken, we'd obviously take that to ELT, and that would probably come back to council to progress.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, team, for the reports, and councillors for the questions. I think it might be underplaying yourself here with incremental. I think if I think back to sort of 5 years ago, one of the major risks was capital delivery. So, gosh, we've come a huge way. So incremental, maybe in your terms, but from where I'm sitting, it's like landing on the moon. I'm really appreciative of the journey that we've taken to get where we are now and to where we're progressively aiming to be, and hearing that project management software and tool and allowing those silos to be broken down so that communication is faster, more efficient, and therefore more cost efficient is ultimately where we want to be. And I feel that as governors, we've enabled that, and we can be certainly proud of ourselves and our team for achieving what they've achieved today. And probably something that hasn't been said for a long time is under budget, on time. Grant Miller. So I think 14.15 is a great number that we certainly should be sharing with the community. And well done to the team. Welcome to the new project managers there. And I'm happy to move the report. Do I have a seconder? Malcolm Lyle. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? There being none, so moved. Alison, you had something to report on the next piece?
It was just noting that it's not on the agenda on paper here, but we do have the development contributions report that was emailed out by Therese earlier this week. So Peter will talk to that report now.
Thank you, Peter.
This report is to state the development contributions balances as of 28th of February. So, sorry, excuse me. So, as has been stated, year to date, we are 17.1 million difference from our budgeted amount. 14.4 of this is due to lack of DCs received. The remainder is due to projects that have been completed ahead of budget. In terms of, we've managed to accelerate works so that they're done before the end of the year, which has just led to a timing difference of increased costs as of this point compared to budget. Part of the issue, to answer the question around whether we'll catch up by the end of the year for the 14.4 million, is it's hard for us to say, because until developers put in their requests, we're a bit blind in what's going to come through. I think it's unlikely we will fully catch up, because part of the issue is also developers can put in requests to lock in a rate, and then they don't have to start building for a year or two. So even though we changed the rates at the beginning of this financial year, we're still receiving DCs at the old rates. And due to some of the rates having gone up quite a bit, we are seeing that deficit hitting us. And so it may not be till next year where people are starting to have to pay fully on the new rates, and we start to see more of that coming through. In terms of reserves, last time there was a question around the split of community and reserves. So at the beginning of this financial year, we split reserves and community DCs. Unfortunately, we weren't able to look back historically and see where costs and revenue had come one for one. So the community was started at a $0 balance, but the rates were also only based on future works to be done. Within the reserves, there was a drop from January to February of 1.3 million. This is due to us purchasing land for the Kakaha Park extension, so being used exactly where it should. Water in general is where we see the highest deficit in our DCs not collected by 11.9 million, with 10.5 million of that being in our sewerage DCs. So that's where our biggest deficit is sitting primarily. It's also where we are experiencing most of our spend, and if you look at the LTP, it's also where we primarily expect to spend at least 50% of our total LTP plan in sewerage and upgrading all that. So that is our heaviest contributor to costs. Last time there was also a question around reserve DCs and how we can only hold them for 10 years and making sure that we are actually using them within that 10-year period. So our current balance at the beginning of the year for reserves was 35.8 million. Within the last 5 years, we have spent over 40 million on DCs. So we use a first in, first out approach with that. So we're able to say confidently that we have not held any reserve DCs for more than 5 years and are well within that limit. I believe Neil wanted to follow up.
Thanks, Peter. Just due to some of the questions that have come up throughout the day, I just wanted to reiterate it that if we look at Table 6 in Peter's report, that measures the life-to-date balances of the DCs. So the second last column reflects a $9.77 million balance. In the balance sheet, it's disclosed as a liability because we've collected those DCs, but we haven't spent it yet. So it's just to come back to the fact that we haven't actually spent money on projects that we haven't collected yet. We've collected $10 million worth of DCs that we haven't spent yet. But there is a balancing act between, as we can see there, where we've actually recovered $35 million of reserves DCs that we haven't spent yet. But we've had to spend $25 million of DCs on sewerage projects. So there is that balancing act, but just wanted to clarify that we actually haven't spent money on DC projects that we haven't recovered yet in total. Any questions?
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Munt?
So just to clarify, the DCs are not ring-fenced like what it's going to be with the future water recommendations, or the bill / act. It's not ring-fenced, so when you collect DCs, it goes into a giant pot and you spend it on whatever's required. Or is it separate? Because you've talked about reserves collected, etc., etc. And are they ring-fenced in each region? Because we've seen where it's been collected regionally, but are they spent regionally where they're collected? And is that a requirement?
So from a financial perspective of reporting, we do ring-fence them. That's why we're able to identify that we've got a 36 million surplus in reserves versus this deficit. But I think from cash point of view, Neil, do you...
So it's managed financially in terms of cash. It's not like a retention bank account that you need to keep the funds separately in a separate bank account. This is managed on a financial basis.
This is interesting. Sorry. I've got a query on all of the tables, actually. Last year, we agreed that we would break it out into catchments, and we named those particular catchments, and they were Springs, they were Rolleston, they were Ellesmere, and they were Melbourne. And yet when I'm looking at the breakdown for the new catchments for the DC areas, I'm noticing that for reserves and community DCs, we have the eastern catchment area, and then we have, I'll just go to reserves because that's the one that I picked up. Sorry. And what we're doing is that we seem to be actually breaking down our catchment areas into, and I'm looking at table 1 here, the reserve DCs are now eastern, or we've got northwest, and we've got southwest with regards to our reserve and our / community DCs. And then we have, with regards to the townships, we have eastern, and then we actually have northwest, and we have West Melton and Melbourne. There was an important distinction made, if I recall quite clearly, that we actually put in catchment areas, and the catchment areas for the eastern should be the Greater Christchurch Urban Development Partnership mapping area. And that would include West Melton, and to that where you're collecting for a growth. To break them down into boundaries, electoral ward boundaries, is nonsense because they'll change every 3 to 6 years. I have a problem with the way that we're presenting the tables because I'm not aware that this has ever come up for discussion outside an annual plan of how we actually collect for these reserve areas. And I'm just wondering if we were to adopt this report, are we now adopting this new catchment area model without fully understanding what the previous model actually said? And now we've got this new model. Sorry? I wasn't at the last meeting that you might have had that one at the meeting, but what's concerning me is why we're trying to narrow down the areas of growth where we're collecting our DCs. It's important that you understand for growth to pay for growth, high growth areas, you're going to collect more DCs than you are for other areas. And if we're trying to actually get into a situation where we're doing district-wide collection of DCs, let's be honest, just do district-wide DC collection across the whole board. See how that goes down with regards to communication with the developers. So I just really, think that we really need to understand the catchment areas that we're asking developers to pay the differentials on. Because I think you'll be hard-pressed to find a developer who's in a high-growth area wanting to actually share those DCs with a low-growth area for the benefit of selling those sections to their community, and what's actually being provided in the way of amenities to that community. For the developer, it's all about getting the dollars back very, very quickly over a very quick period of time.
Thank you, Deborah. I think, can you please just shape your question?
So, okay, so I'll shape my question. With regards to the DC catchment area breakdown, can I have an understanding why this is now different than what was presented to us last year with regards to the catchment plans that were actually put in the annual plan?
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. We will take a look at that table and come back to you.
Grant.
It's a really interesting document. I'm looking at the green total. So just as a hype, is it not working?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Am I not close enough? Sorry. So just hypothesise that we kept all the DCs in one cash pot. This document tells us that we would have had $9.7 million cash balance net. And and what are we using that money for? As I understand it, we're offsetting that against our group debt. So potentially we're actually $10 million less debt than what we would normally have. So I suppose I just wanted to put my shoes in the other feet and say the wider ratepayers of Selwyn are benefiting to the tune of $10 million less debt they're paying for, aren't they? Is that right? Because the DCs at the moment are reducing our debt level by $10 million.
Correct.
So there is a wider benefit to Selwyn ratepayers at the moment by having a cash balance of DCs. So when we talk about growth paying for growth, I think we just need to be aware that possibly there is some benefits to the wider ratepayers as well.
That's correct.
Thank you, Grant. There being no more questions, can I have a move and seconder for the report? Malcolm Lyle and Sam seconded. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, so moved. Thank you. We now move to the resolution to exclude the public and move into public excluded. Can I have a move and seconder